Have you ever heard about the intense rivalry between the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew? This story is far more than just another tale of gang violence. It is one that has shaped the history of an entire city. Imagine this: two groups that originally started as protectors of their community, only to become locked in an all-consuming battle for power, influence, and control. What started as a partnership of mutual interests soon spiraled into one of the UK's most notorious gang rivalries, one that continues to echo across Birmingham today. In this video, we'll delve into the complex and intense story of the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew. We will explore how these groups evolved from local protectors to bitter rivals, each battling for dominance in Birmingham's underworld. In this video, we'll take you through their rise, their fractured relationship, and the horrifying violence that defined their long-standing feud. Let's go back to the beginning. The rivalry between these two gangs didn't start out as a feud. In fact, at one point, the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew were united. They were originally part of a larger network of vigilante groups formed in the 1980s. During this time, communities in Birmingham were dealing with severe social tensions, particularly among young Black and Asian men. The rise of racist gangs and frequent race riots had led these young men to band together, forming gangs in defense of their neighborhoods. In the face of external threats, these young men initially took action to protect their communities. They became vigilantes, patrolling their streets and standing up to racially motivated violence. But as the years passed, their methods became more extreme, and their focus shifted. What started as protection quickly turned into a dangerous pursuit of power. The groups began using violence not only to defend their neighborhoods, but to establish dominance over others, slowly transitioning into the very threat they had once stood against. The turning point came when crack cocaine and heroin flooded the streets of Birmingham in the 1990s. The introduction of these drugs was a game changer, and it didn't take long for the gangs to recognize the potential profits to be made. The Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew quickly turned their focus to the narcotics trade, expanding their activities beyond petty crime and street-level dealings. The arrival of the Jamaican Yardies added another layer of complexity. These organized criminals were raking in substantial profits, using brutal force to maintain control. As a result, the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew saw an opportunity and began to clash with these older, more established gangs, leading to violent confrontations and deadly street battles. As these two gangs grew in power and wealth, their rivalries became more pronounced. The Burger Bar Boys, who operated from areas like Handsworth and Winson Green, made a name for themselves with their audacious actions, while the Johnson crew, emerging from areas such as Lozells, Nechells, and Erdington, became a force to be reckoned with. Despite their differences, both groups shared a common adversary, the Yardies. The fierce competition for control of the drug trade fueled their rivalry. The city of Birmingham soon became a battleground, marked by increasingly violent clashes between the two gangs. The streets became a playground for armed youngsters, many of whom had no training in firearms but were eager to assert their newfound power. The violence between the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew escalated rapidly, with gunfights becoming an everyday occurrence. As firearms became more accessible, both gangs ramped up their brutality, using terror and intimidation as tools to maintain control over their respective territories. This period in Birmingham's history was marked by chaos and bloodshed, with civilians caught in the crossfire. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the once seemingly benign street-level battles between these gangs became more organized and sophisticated. The level of violence had moved beyond street shootings to organized assassinations, as the rivalry took on a more sinister tone. What started as a clash of egos and street power turned into a war for dominance, with each side willing to use any means necessary to crush the other. The story of the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew is not just one of violence. It's also a tragic tale of innocent lives caught in the crossfire. One of the most devastating events in this feud was the killing of two teenage girls, Charlene Ellis and Letisha Shakespeare, in 2003. The two were innocent bystanders, tragically shot dead during a gang retaliation attack. Their deaths marked a turning point in the conflict, as the public's horror at the senseless violence led to an outpouring of grief and anger. This attack, intended for a member of the Johnson crew, shattered the lives of the girls' families and highlighted the indiscriminate nature of gang violence. The gang members involved in the attack seemed to have abandoned any moral code, with no regard for the lives of innocent people. The killing sparked widespread outrage and demanded that something be done to end the violence. Despite the outrage, the cycle of violence did not stop. The families of the victims continued to face intimidation and harassment, and the gangs themselves continued their brutal conflict. The tragic deaths of these two girls, far from ending the bloodshed, only deepened the divide and fueled the rage of both gangs. The violence didn't end with the deaths of Ellis and Shakespeare. If anything, it escalated further. The Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew, each seeking to avenge the deaths of their own members or to maintain control, became embroiled in a deadly tit-for-tat that lasted for years. Even as law enforcement tightened its grip, the fear of retaliation kept many witnesses silent, and the gangs continued to operate with impunity. Over the years, several members of both gangs faced legal consequences for their actions. Notable figures from the Burger Bar Boys, such as Marcus Ellis, Nathan Martin, and Michael Gregory, were involved in several high-profile criminal cases, including murders and violent assaults. However, despite the legal setbacks, many of the gang members managed to escape conviction, either through a lack of concrete evidence or because key witnesses refused to testify out of fear. Despite multiple efforts by law enforcement to disrupt their operations, including major raids and high-profile trials, the gangs have proven remarkably resilient. Their influence is still felt in Birmingham and the surrounding areas, and their rivalry continues to disrupt life in many communities. The police have attempted to curb the influence of the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew, including issuing Britain's largest gang injunction in 2017. This ban, which affected 18 key members, was intended to limit their ability to operate in Birmingham and prevent them from glorifying their violent lifestyle through music and media. However, even with this legal pressure, the gangs have found ways to continue their operations. In the years since, both gangs have faced significant losses. Many of their leaders have been imprisoned, while others have sought refuge outside Birmingham. The fear of retaliation continues to hang over the families of the victims and anyone who dares to speak out. Despite the years of violence, the specter of these gangs' resurgence remains a real concern as they maintain a grip on the underworld in Birmingham. The ongoing violence and intimidation tactics used by both the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew serve as a stark reminder of the dangers that can emerge when communities are left to fend for themselves. The sense of fear and lawlessness that these gangs have created has profoundly affected the city's social fabric, leaving lasting scars on those who have been caught in their path. As we look back at the legacy of the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew, it becomes clear that this is more than just a story of gangs. It's a story of how violence, fear, and power can destroy communities, and how the relentless pursuit of dominance can lead to years of suffering. Even as law enforcement continues its efforts to curb gang activity, the scars left by this rivalry are still visible in Birmingham today. The question remains: will the Burger Bar Boys and the Johnson crew ever be fully dismantled, or will their grip on Birmingham's streets continue to haunt the city for generations to come? Join us in the comments and share your thoughts on the ongoing struggle between these two powerful gangs. Have things improved in Birmingham, or is the battle still raging beneath the surface?